All right, let's jump right in. Now, you hear clown, and you probably think of one thing. And then you hear glam rock, and you think of something, well, completely different, right? They seem like they're from two separate universes. But what if they're not? What if they actually share a secret language, a kind of common DNA? That's exactly what we're going to unpack today. You've probably heard this one. It's the classic Pagliacci joke. It's the whole foundation for the sad clown paradox, you know? This idea that the people who make us laugh the hardest are secretly the most broken inside. It's a really powerful thought. But what if it's missing the point?
So let's ask a different question. What if this whole art form, what we call clowning, isn't really about the emotion on the surface at all? What if it's about tapping into something way deeper, a state of being that connects the performer and the audience in an almost hypnotic way?
Now, to really get this, we've got to look at the story of one guy in particular, Avner Eisenberg, who you might know as Avner the Eccentric. His journey really shows us a crucial turning point that changed his entire approach to his art.
So early in his career, Avner was kind of doing what a lot of performers do. He was mixing it up. His one-man show had some spoken word comedy bits, but it also had his physical silent stuff. He really had a foot in two different worlds. And then one day his teacher pulls him aside and says this. He basically tells him, look, when you're talking, you're good, but you're just another comedian telling jokes. When you're silent, that's when the magic happens. And that one little piece of advice, it changed everything. And he didn't just kind of think about it. Nope, he went all in. After that night, every single verbal joke was cut from the show. Completely. That one conversation sent him down a totally new path, all about figuring out what that magic really was. Okay, so what is this magic? What was his teacher talking about? Well, it's not just about, being quiet. It's about an incredibly deep technical craft that's disguised to look like it's totally effortless. And this right here is the absolute key. The goal isn't to show off how hard you're working, it's the total opposite. You take something unbelievably difficult, something you've practiced for thousands of hours, and you make it look like it's just happening right there for the very first time. Now, this whole philosophy, it's not new. It has these deep, deep roots in a tradition called commedia dell'arte from Italy. These were performers who mastered a whole vocabulary of gags and movements so well that they could just get up on stage and improvise entire shows. So that improvisation we see on stage, it's not random at all. It's actually the end result of this really disciplined four-step process. First, you master a super hard skill. Then, you simplify it down to its bare essentials. You practice it over and over and over again. And only then can you perform it in a way that looks totally spontaneous. But look, that technical mastery, that's only half the story. The other part, the really mysterious part, is how the performer actually connects with us, the audience. And for Avner, the answer came from a place he never would have expected. So get this, back in the 70s, after a workshop, a parent comes up to him and accuses him of using hypnotic techniques on the kids. Now, Avner has no idea what this person is talking about, but he's curious, and that one weird accusation sends him down a rabbit hole, studying the work of this famous therapist, Milton Erickson, and it just blows his mind. He gets into this field called NLP, or Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And it sounds really complex, but the basic idea is just breaking down how successful people, therapists, leaders, performers, use their bodies and their language to get results. For Avner, it was like finally getting a rule book for something he'd been doing intuitively his whole life. And the number one goal of all of this is to create something called rapport. Rapport is that amazing moment when the audience stops just watching you and starts feeling with you. They're not thinking, oh, I hope he makes that trick. No, they're actually feeling the tension themselves. They become part of the experience. Another one of his brilliant teachers, Jacques Lecoq, put it perfectly. He said, you don't clown for people, you clown with them. It's not a presentation, it's a collaboration. Okay, so all of this leads us to a really big idea, a kind of thesis for this whole thing. We have to completely change the way we think about the word clown. Check this out. Years ago, Avner made a huge change. He took off the red nose. That's it. And what happened? The way critics wrote about his show transformed overnight. They stopped calling it a show for kids and started using words like existential and poetry. The art wasn't in the nose.
There's this amazing story where one of his students went to a big clown convention and came back and said something so insightful. He said, "There were a lot of clowns in that show, but not very much clowning." That just nails it, doesn't it? The difference between the costume and the action. So let's break it down. On one side, you have the noun, a clown. That's the costume, the red nose, the big shoes, the stereotype. But on the other side, you have the verb, to clown. And that's totally different. That's a way of being, an action that comes from an inner compulsion. It's about being vulnerable and true.
And here is the absolute core of it all. We don't really care that someone can juggle. What we're actually fascinated by is why. Why does this person in front of us have this burning need, this compulsion to do this thing right now? That inner drive, that's what's magnetic. That's the real show.
All right, so if clowning is a verb, if it's a state of being, then it doesn't have to wear big shoes and a red nose, right? And this, my friends, is where our story takes a really unexpected and very cool turn. So, let me introduce you to Lindsay Kemp. He was a master of physical theater, a student of mime, a brilliant performer who mixed all these amazing styles together. And back in the 1960s, he took on this young, kind of struggling musician as a student, and that student was David Bowie. Kemp is the one who taught Bowie about the power of the theatrical persona.
No, just think about Ziggy Stardust for a second. The theatricality, the sense that this character was driven by some otherworldly, unstoppable compulsion, the incredible connection he built with his audience. It's all there. The elaborate makeup, the costumes. Bowie wasn't just singing songs. He was clowning. He was using these exact same principles. And that brings us to our final thought. If the whole point of the performance is to put on a mask in order to reveal a deeper, more vulnerable truth, then what's really the difference between a red nose on a clown's face and a lightning bolt painted on a rock star's? Maybe they're just two different masks pointing to the exact same magic.